Hi guys, I'm Sean from Bluehub, and today I've got a video for you on how you can replicate an outsourced or co-manufacturing scenario, in whichever terminology you may use for that, scenario within Cin7 core without using the advanced production module. Now, the method I'm going to be looking at today looks mainly at the method where you would be free issuing your part to the customer, or the supplier, sorry, and then they would carry out their work from there. However, you can adapt this process to match if you was going to be selling on the part and purchasing back a finished good, etc., etc. So if you bear with me, I will go through the details of what I'm going to be showing you today. So firstly here we have our co-manufacturer, which is going to be the supplier I'm going to be using or purchasing from in this example. This can just be a standard co-manufacturer or a standard supplier. There's no particular settings that need to be done here or created here. The only additional feature that we will have for the supplier is that they will need a location in order to store goods that are on their site. So they'll need an additional location created within the reference books. We then have a product, and our product is going to be a co-manufactured item, aptly named. And this item is going to be, can be any item, but it will need an assembly BOM against it, and the assembly BOM will just need to be the item that you're going to be free issuing to that supplier. So in my case, that is going to be our free issued good here, which we can just plug in like so. Now obviously, if you're issuing multiple goods to them that they're going to build into one finished good, you can do it that way. If you're issuing one good that they're going to do some work to or spray or something like that, you can do it that way. But the main point of this is we're going to be consuming our initial good that we send to them, and we're going to be generating our finished good here. So it's going to be converting from one into another with their process. From there, that's our components. That will obviously need purchasing costs against it and things like that, and we can bring that into stock however we want. And we then have finally our production request, which is where our price for the actual production is going to be stored. And this can be called whatever you want it to be, but this is what you're going to send to them to request them to make the first product. Because we're doing this via a service purchase, it does have to be a service type item. So it can be whatever you'd like it to be, but in my case I've just called this production request to make it clear it's separate from our co-manufactured item here. So jumping into the process itself, the first step would usually be raising a purchase within the system, and raising a purchase for the actual co-manufacturing of the item. The way we'll do this is a service purchase, because technically we're not purchasing a finished good, we're purchasing a process from them. We'll then select our supplier like so, and then we're just going to make sure the location is set to the correct location, and we're going to specify in our order here that we want a manufacturing service. I think I called it production request, didn't I? Yeah. So we can put in our production request there, and we can get that price to pull through as well, I believe. And from there, we have our production request we're going to send to them. Now, like I say, this can look however you want it, however it needs to look for that supplier's case, but in my case, since I'm doing a demo here, I've just called this production request. One important factor about this production request is we need this to be mapped to a expense account for our costs to be properly accrued. So we have our production request here. We want this to be mapped to a expense account, so we could probably go with cost of goods in this case, but if you have a specific production expense account you want to use for cost of production, you might want to put it to that. From there, we can then send off this purchase order to our actual supplier or our co-manufacturer, where they can then begin production. However, before they do that, they're going to need the raw materials to convert into the finished product. The way we do this is we would go into the system now, we would raise a new inventory and then transfer, and we would transfer our raw materials across to them so they could begin production. Now, like I say, this process may vary if you are transferring ownership of the goods. In this case, we aren't doing that, we're just doing a transfer, so we retain ownership, and that's why it will remain as a transfer. And you'll see here I'm transferring from my main warehouse to my co-manufacturing location. I'm going to, in my case, skip the order, but obviously you can use the transfer details as needed. And I'm just going to be transferring my free issued part across to my co-manufactured location like so. can give that a stock received date and complete. And they have now received my request for manufacturing and my part once this has actually been obviously shipped to their location. From here, once we've heard news that that has now arrived in their location, what we're going to want to do is go into the production module here, and we're going to want to create a new assembly. Now this assembly is something we're going to be doing just to convert our product into the new product, our original product into the converted product. This will need to take place in the co-manufacturing location, so you have traceability over the fact it's happening there, plus that's where the stock is now located. We're going to want to put in our finished item SKU, so in my case that was our co-manufactured item here. In my case I'm just doing the one, but you'll always want your quantity here to match your purchase order. I'm going to then load my BOM in, and we have our one item here that we're producing. It's got our total cost here based upon the actual raw materials we're sending across. And we're just going to go through the assembly process as you would with a standard assembly, which means confirming the order, making sure the correct raw materials are applied to it, and then completing it. Just before you do complete this, if there are any variations between what you expect your co-manufacturer to use and what they've actually used, you do have the ability now to overwrite the actual yield or the component quantities based on what feedback they give you. Other than that, we can press complete, and we can now see that we have our final good in stock, or our manufactured good in stock, a value of £10 because that was the cost of our components. So it has taken into consideration the component costs and produced our finished good. From here, depending on whether you receive stock first or invoice first, you can expect to either receive in your stock or do the invoicing process. However, once the supplier has given you an invoice, that's where the process continues. So if I put my invoice into the system like so, you can see that we have an expense account of cost of goods sold here, which is important. Like I say, this needs to be an expense account for this to work. But when we now click authorize, we'll see an expenses button appear. This will allow us to allocate our costs back to our assembly so that the cost is allocated to the finished good. We can see here that we have our line, which is our $16.99 amount from our current order. We're going to click the tick box here to allow us to distribute this cost. We're then going to add an allocation to our assembly. And here we just want to take our assembly number and then put that in like so. Yeah. And we can see now that that's being allocated to an assembly in the co-manufacturing location, and it's going into inventory value. From here we can select the amount of this value we want to distribute to this assembly specifically. So if you are doing a co-manufacturing request for multiple items, you can distribute it to each of the different finished goods. In my case I just have the one, so I'm going to be allocating all $16.99 against this finished good. Once I'm happy with this allocation, I can just click the save button here, and that's going to allocate that to the cost of goods for that product. From there, if I go back to my assembly and I just refresh the page, I can check my manual journals, and I now have a manual journal created to debit inventory and credit cost of goods sold for the $16.99 here, inflating our finished goods value to now what should be $26.99, which we can check by going into the availability and just looking at our manufactured good here. So that was called co-manufactured item. You can take that, we can search that in here, and we can see now that that has a stock value of $26.99, completing the process. So when you sell it, your cost of goods is accurate based on both the purchase and the actual raw materials sent. Now this is one way of doing it. There is also the advanced manufacturing model has a built-in co-manufacturing function, which gives you kind of more traceability over the different areas of the process. They're kind of all more linked together. But there are improvements you can make to this method as well, which can help improve that. But that'll be all from me. If this helped at all, please feel free to leave a like. And if you want to see more information like this in the future, always click that subscribe button. Bye!